more flexibility, we have more depth, we have more guys pulling the rope in the right direction, so starting to see some success.
It's a special year, and I think our guys deserve to have the chips pushed all in.
It was nice when our management goes all in and it puts pressure on our team, and we like pressure.
Winning's tough, and if you think you have a group that could possibly do it, you go all in.
Okay.
Welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab.
Hello and welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab. My name is Adrian Hernandez. I am here today with Evan, Ezra, and Jackie of MileHighHockey.com, and we are here to talk Colorado Avalanche the day after a glorious evening for all Colorado Avalanche fans, with Miles Wood securing an overtime victory for the Colorado Avalanche in Game 1 of the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs against the Dallas Stars. First of all, thank you to the three of you for joining me today. It is a great day, as I mentioned, to talk Avalanche hockey. And thank you to everyone out there watching currently live. We appreciate you all. Please like, subscribe, and share this stuff with your fellow Avalanche fans. We have, good news to talk about today. It's a nice day. But let's look ahead a little bit and maybe, talk about some things that could potentially be problems. Or we can just keep it rolling with the good times, which I'm always with that as well. But let's start with the good times that were the OT winner. I want to get all of your reactions, everyone here on the panel, just to what we witnessed. The Avalanche took Game 1 in dramatic fashion. As we saw, the Avs have come back 5 times this season when down 3 goals and not having a single goal as well. They've done that 5 times this season, which is incredible. And I'll send this one to you first, Evan. What do you attribute that resolve to with this Colorado Avalanche team?
Man, it's just a will of not giving up. I think that's really all it is, right? I mean, I think there are a lot of questions and storylines about how the team would perform, coming off a week off, right? Whereas Dallas just played 48 hours before in a long 7-game series. And so they're kind of in the swing of things, right? And the Avs, we know that they struggle whenever they do have long stretches of time off. So there are definitely questions about that. And I think that showed in the first period in particular when they did go down 3-0, like you said. So it's really good to see them that they eventually did find their legs and eventually did push through Dallas. And pretty much after that first period, they were the better team from there on out. And that is really, really promising for sure. And just this continued attrition of just not giving up, using the players that you have to your ability, and really going head to head with the Stars and particularly their depth. I mean, maybe we can talk a little bit more about the actual goal itself, later on, but it's just a great sense, a great feeling that you didn't blow a Game 1 this time, like you did in the first round.
Well, it definitely felt a little. We got up to a rocky start, to say the least. Mikko Rantanen couldn't keep himself out of the penalty box. The Avalanche were having a hard time. It seemed kind of just getting into the right place as individuals. I mean, it's hard to harp on a guy like Nathan MacKinnon, but I know for a fact when I watched the replay of that first goal, he was kind of just adrift and not really settled into his role defensively in that moment. But obviously in the second and third period, things changed. And I didn't mention in that stat that I led with that in all of those 5 comeback victories, they also shut the opposing team out in both the second and third period, and all 5 of those 3+ goal deficit comebacks. So impressive stuff from the Colorado Avalanche, to say the least. However, I don't want to make a habit of comeback victories. Ezra, what was your reaction? I know when Miles Wood first came to town, we were kind of tooting the horn and saying, this is the sort of dude that can utilize his speed and create opportunities. And that's exactly what we saw from him in that overtime winner. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love seeing him use that speed and make an excellent defender like Miro Heiskanen look like he can't keep up. Like that's something that you just don't see from Heiskanen in general. And for Wood to also be able to finish when he got the breakaway, I was excited. I thought he could finish it, but to see him actually pull it off as a guy who generally puck skills not his first the first thing you think of when you think of Miles Wood, you think of that speed, you think of hitting. And those are things that he was decent with during the game. I thought he definitely needed to contribute on the stat sheet after his weird high sticking penalty where I don't know what he was thinking. He got his stick on the puck, but he also had his fist in a guy's face, so there was no way he wasn't going to connect with the helmet. It was bizarre, and I love that he got that redemption in the overtime with the win, with the winning goal, I should say. I mean, it's exciting. I think it's great to see that the depth on this team is able to step up, like we saw in the Winnipeg series against a team like Dallas that also has tremendous depth, and is going to get contributions throughout the lineup as things move forward. So. Overall, I'm feeling great.
Yeah, well, you called the Avs potentially sweeping the Stars in the last episode. So, I mean, we're only a game deep. But if you ask me, I mean, what else can the Stars do than what they did in the first period, which is take advantage of the Avalanche shooting themselves in the foot? I think 5-on-5. I don't know. Go ahead, Ezra.
Well, I guess it's just like try to do anything in the second and third periods because they were bad. I mean, the Avalanche took it to them. The Avalanche made that happen, but God, Dallas was bad. They were sitting back. They couldn't connect on passes. They looked totally lost in the second and third period.
Yeah, and the funny thing about what you mentioned too with Miles Wood finishing is when you look back at the replay. That puck was dancing on his stick, even though he was on the breakaway. So I think with that context too, it's like really surprising that he was able to put that puck past a goalie like Jake Ottinger. Jackie, what was your takeaway from that goal? And kind of to you, what led to the sway in momentum towards the Avalanche?
I feel like we've seen this. Maybe it's the identity and the story of the Avs of this year, but it's kind of more of the same. It's dig a hole and then get yourself out of it. So I don't know. I mean, could they win a cup continuing to do that? I don't know. Maybe they can. But for me, I don't know that I would fully have the answer of how to characterize this team until I see them sort of win in a different way. But for now, obviously, it worked. It got them a victory in Dallas. So kind of erases that home ice advantage and everything.
Yep.
I think the 2 power play goals was huge, which is key. It's good to have the power play rolling because in a lot of the playoffs where the Avs were eliminated, it's because the power play went poof. Mm-hmm. And so it's good to start on that foot, even though you kind of like to see not relying on the power play to get back into a game. I mean, it's good that they're doing it, but I would just like to see a little bit more like, I don't know, exertion 5-on-5, exerting that dominance 5-on-5 in the scoring realm. So for me, it just kind of was like a continuation of the same story. Like, it's great that they can change the momentum. I feel like they have confidence that they know they can do that, which is important to know that they're not out of a game and not hang their heads. But I don't know. It's just, like I said, it just, for me, it just feels like, can they keep doing this? Can they keep playing with fire? So that's where I'm at.
Well, and to your credit, if Manson doesn't make that save right before the end of the first period for Georgiev, with Jamie Benn kind of on reaching around his outstretched pad, it's a 4-0 game heading into the first intermission. And I don't know that the confidence is the same. I know you shouldn't necessarily have all that much confidence being down 3-0, but the Avs have proved to be able to do so in the past. I think 4-0 would just have been like, as the announcers for ESPN said, Dallas kind of going for the jugular. So I think that was a really big moment for the Avalanche. And the other thing that stuck out to me last night is I don't hear a lot of Georgiev haters. And it's been about a week since we heard all of them, a little over a week, I should say. But I'm really impressed with kind of how the defensive end and the goaltender have seemed to settle in. Evan, are we seeing kind of a confident keeper and a confident D-core once again here in Colorado?
You'd certainly hope so, right? First off, the 2 goals on 5 shots to open that game against Dallas in game 1 was definitely a little bit shaky. I have to remember the goals now. I don't remember them off the top of my head.
Well, one was sort of a screen, and then the other one was Johnston.
Off the draw.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that one was even deflected off of Kale's stick a little bit. So he could have maybe positioned himself a little bit better for either of them, but hard to kind of just, it's not like you can put the blame solely on him, right? It's a team sport. But even after that, he bounced back brilliantly, and the overtime. I mean, that I think is arguably some of the best goaltending Georgiev has played, not just in an Avalanche jersey, but in his entire career, quite frankly, because it was all Dallas in that first 10 minutes, in those first 10 minutes, and I think they were leading shots 5-0 in the overtime, and then the Avs maybe had 2 or 3, and one of them went in, and that's how it worked out. So that just shows you the beneficiary of having a really hot goaltender, right? He's now won 5 games in a row. He has not given up more than, I believe, 3 goals now in a game ever since Game 1 of the Jets series, where he gave up 7. So he's really, really turned it around, and it has helped that he does get that defensive help from the guys in front of him. And I'll admit that Manson save, I didn't realize that was him. I thought Georgiev got it in the final seconds. I didn't realize until after the game that Manson was actually the one that saved that. So again, bailing out your goaltender, and it's that SpongeBob meme. I saw it on Twitter or somewhere else, but it was Josh Manson to save 2 goals, so I'd have 2 nickels. A little weird that it's happened twice.
Yeah,
but it's happened twice.
Yeah, it's happened twice, and it's happened in the most important time of the year twice, I would say, as well. And that's kind of what I was thinking on when I mentioned that I felt like Manson could kind of come on a little bit stronger here in the playoffs. Not necessarily like that sort of specific play, but he's the type of guy who's in that position to make that play. Obviously, it's happened more than once. We got 2 nickels, as you put it, Evan. So I'm excited about seeing Georgiev and kind of the bottom 4 of the pairings on defense really start to kind of settle into their own identities. We see that with Girard and Manson, and then obviously, we got Sean Walker and Jack Johnson down in the bottom, and they're doing fine as well with what ice time they are getting. But Ezra, I want to send this one to you because you're basically 1 victory away for the Avalanche from getting a ding in my book, although this wasn't necessarily your bold prediction. It kind of was. I think I'd give you a ding because of how confident you were in saying that. But what is your key, I guess, your keys to victory in Game 2?
I mean, I really think that the Avalanche don't have to change anything. What they did, other than coming out slow, which I don't think they'll do again because the rust is off. The rust was shaken midway through the first period, I felt like. They managed to dig quite the hole with that rust on them, but they got it off. And I really like, I mean, even strength, the whole game, the Avalanche dominated. And then they got their goals on the power play. I think what it comes down to is, unfortunately, my actual bold prediction was a perfect penalty kill. And they did not have that. They did give up a power play goal. And I think it comes down to winning that special teams battle again, because it looks like Georgiev and Ottinger are going to be kind of the same guy. They're going to either let in some softies or be excellent. That's who they've both been for most of this year, and who they've been in the playoffs so far has been either very good or very bad. Not that Ottinger was very bad last night, but on the fringe of being bad versus very good. So I think it really just is going to come down to that power play success for both teams. If the Avs power play scores more goals than the Dallas power play, I think the Avs walk away with an easy victory because they are dominating even strength.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, and I think it is fair to say maybe Jake Ottinger had a lackluster performance last night, especially on the surface of his stat line, like 22 saves on 26 shots with 4 goals allowed. I don't think any goalie is going to be touting that statistic. I think he's probably, hoping to turn the page and come out a little bit stronger against the Avalanche in Game 2. But Jackie, Ezra says the Avs don't need to change much, and I'm with him on that. But what sort of adjustments do you see from the Avs and maybe also from Dallas going into Game 2?
It's hard to say from the Avs side because they haven't lost again. So, I mean, like I said, it's just so hard to tell. I mean, hey, if they can just keep doing this and sweep every series or win in 5, then then they don't need to do anything different. But until we see it, it's a little hard to say what their undoing would be. Obviously, don't get out to a slow start. Don't have defensive breakdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, those are pretty key, but like I said, until you really see where the cracks are, it's a little hard to say, hey, do this so it doesn't happen. So it's just kind of been the story of this year, like I said, and maybe it'll take them to the end, or maybe they'll have to finally do something different. I don't know. And that's why it's so hard to look at this. I mean, like, all the winning's great, and like I said, if you can keep doing that, fantastic. But it's just, I don't know. I don't know if this version of how they play is good enough. As far as Dallas, don't take penalties. I think they should have learned that from Winnipeg. We're always told there's never any penalties called in the playoffs. Well, that hasn't started yet.
Nope.
Maybe if you get deep into a series, maybe if we get deep into rounds, but I think that would be something I'd hammer home, is that their power play is working right now, or don't let Nichushkin be uncovered in front of the net. That would be helpful, considering he's scored 8 goals now, so that might be like a clue there. I guess they'd be concerned about how the Avs are controlling play 5-on-5. It's tough because the Avs weren't getting a lot of shots early on. Like, it looked like they had the puck enough, but then they weren't shooting it. So maybe look at what you did in the first period to kind of... Because I don't think the Avs had a lot going in the first period. So whatever you could think about in that regard to keep the Avs away. But you have to slow them down. They can't go through the neutral zone. They can't... They're untouched a little too much. And I think Dallas was trying to do a few too many east-west passes. Like, they could get one through, but they were trying to make the second one, and I think the Avs were doing a good job at disrupting that. So if I were them, I would just be like, this team isn't going to let you complete 3 passes that way. Like, one pass, if you have a look, shoot the puck. And then I'd also say the same thing for the Avs, too. Like, you might have the puck a lot, but you kind of need to get it more towards the net. Is also what I'd like to see from the Avs.
And to your point with that, I wish Nichushkin would have shot on that 2-on-1 he had with McKinnon. I think even the defender sagged a little bit. It's hard not to pass to 29 on a 2-on-1, but I think even Val, when he looks back at the tape, he's like, yeah, I got to shoot that one. I got to pick a corner, because I think that he probably, I mean, we've seen Nichushkin pick a corner on that almost from that very exact spot this postseason already. So he's very much capable. So I'm with you there. I think it showed up on the stat line too, as we mentioned, the 26 shots on. I think it felt like the Avs were getting more than that, especially as you mentioned in the first period. But there was just kind of a lot of fighting the puck in the first period, which is why I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But it just does feel like so far after game 1, if the Avalanche don't beat themselves, they're a very tough out. If they don't dig that hole, who knows how that game really looks. That could have been a much different game, even opposite direction form of a blowout. But it remains to be seen kind of how this series will settle. Anytime you have a series with a guy like Jamie Benn, things could get interesting if things get out of hand. And then just a shift, not to mention we talked about the playoffs and the power play stuff. And I can't help but think back to Pete DeBoer's comments a few years back when the Avs had, I think, 6 or 7 power plays in the first 2 games against Vegas. He basically blew the whistle and said, hey, what's up with all these penalties? And the Avs didn't get a single power play for the rest of the series. So there's going to be some...
Yeah, that's something that they're going to have to watch out for, because then if you look at it, the Avs scored 1 goal at 5-on-5 in the first 3 periods. So is that going to be enough? Maybe not.
Yeah. And Evan, I saw you raising
posts, I think. But yes.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. McCarr did.
I was going to say, if I could touch on the improvement parts and what to look for, I guess with changes, because I was on a Dallas Stars podcast, the Defending Big D. They are our I guess old SB Nation affiliate now that covers the Stars. But go check them out because they have all the Stars coverage. You can analyze all you want about them from their site. But I was on their podcast and they talked a lot about Wyatt Johnston and how hot he's been and all that sort of stuff, right? And we saw it in the third period where Wyatt Johnston did get moved up to that first line. And he helped at least drive at least a little bit of change, because it at least kept the Avs away from Jake Ottinger for about 10 minutes or so without a shot. So really have to be concerned about that. And, you still haven't seen the likes of Joe Pavelski really tear it open yet in the playoffs. Jamie Benn the same way, Matt Duchene the same way. So you really have to be careful with that for sure. Because while the Avalanche are much more top heavy, right? You have your Nathan McKinnons, your Mikko Rantanens. The Stars as a whole are very more well-rounded, and could go up better against the likes of the bottom six of the Avs. But then again, the bottom six of the Avs was the one that won the game last night, right? Against the top guys. So Dallas is going to have to be changing something or some things, right? Whether that's moving Johnston around or Joe Pavelski, Jamie Benn, or whatever it might be. They have a lot of different combinations that are possible. So the Avs have to be wary of that and be ready for whatever changes are coming for Game 2 tomorrow night, for sure. And I pretty much agree with everyone else about penalties. Like, stay out of the box for both teams, really. Yeah. And, obviously better 5-on-5 play will always help your case if you're the Avalanche as well.
Agreed. And, you say the Avs are top heavy, but I think it's hard for me to really give people that claim, because, Val Nichushkin is the X factor for the Avalanche. And I know he's a part of the top six, but he's not the Rantanen, Makar, and McKinnon thing,
he's number 4 though.
But then you got Lehkonen, and he's proven time and time again with the Canadiens and the Avalanche to be not only a great, depth piece, but a playoff performer. Here he is lighting it up again in the playoffs. And then let's move on to our next segment, which, if you folks follow us on X at Mile High Hockey, you would have seen this news broke today. Jared Bednar on Altitude Radio mentioned that Jonathan Drouin is returning to the ice, skating for the first time since he was injured, I think, via skate blade. Kind of a taboo thing around here in Colorado. But it sounds like, other than the fact that they were waiting for it to heal to the point that he could put gear back on and not risk infection, that he's good to go. So I think that Colorado's depth is still kind of evolving. I know Kiviranta also made the trip as well. We saw Chris Wagner last night. So I'm with you. I do agree that Dallas as a whole is probably more of a deep team than Colorado. However, I think the phrase that Avs are top heavy is, I think there's an argument to be had there. Just in terms of the Avalanche, maybe not a side-by-side comparison with the Stars. I think you give it to the Stars. But in terms of classifying the Avs, I still think that they have Stanley Cup potential depth. But let's talk about Jonathan Drouin returning to the ice. And since we went back to Evan there, Ezra, I'll send this one to you. What does his return mean to this Avs team? And what do you do with him in terms of the lineup? Where does he go?
It's huge. I think, we've seen Zach Parise on the second line really doing his best out there, and that's wonderful. I am so thrilled that he, at this stage in his career, can keep up with the second line, but he really is struggling to keep up. And bringing in Jonathan Drouin means he gets to drop down lower in the lineup where he's a better fit, and Drouin and Nichushkin will take that spot on the second line. For me, I'm sticking Drouin back where he has been so successful with McKinnon and Rantanen. I think for a couple of reasons. Nichushkin has been great up on that top line, but his actual production has come on the power play. So I don't think that the top line with him on it has been as good at even strength as just looking at Nichushkin's raw numbers would make it look like. I think he, on that second line with Middlestat and Lehkonen, is going to be a dominant force, and it's going to really change the way that line fares, because as great as Middlestat was in the first round, he wasn't so hot last night offensively. He made some great defensive plays, but that chemistry with Lehkonen and Parise it wasn't quite serving us in the way that it did against Winnipeg, which I think speaks to the defensive prowess of Dallas more than anything else, because, the Middlestat was able to eat up Mark Scheifele in the first round, and going against Dallas's forwards, it's just a much stronger defensive group than Winnipeg has. So he needs that extra help. And Drouin with McKinnon and Rantanen, I think will change the way Rantanen is playing, because with Nichushkin playing kind of the net front role on that line, the board battle guy, kind of playing like the big body that he is, Rantanen has kind of eased off the gas a little bit. I know we're all pretty concerned with him in the first round, although he managed to rack up points like he always seems to, and score big goals when it came time to eliminate the Jets. But last night in particular, I was frustrated with his penalties, with his mindset. He just didn't seem like a guy who he didn't seem like the version of Mikko Rantanen we've seen have success in the playoffs. And I'd love to see something change for him. And if putting Drouin on that line is enough to get him to change his game and play kind of more of the Nichushkin role on that line, that could be good. The way things are looking right now, I'm like, is Nichushkin number 4 or is Nichushkin number 3 in our forwards? Because Rantanen is not himself right now. For me, I'm like, yeah, throw Drouin up there. Let's see what that changes for Mikko and Nate. And that second line is going to look so dangerous. Ooh, I'm excited.
Well, yeah. I think it looks dangerous either way with Drouin coming into the lineup and however you slot him in, if you slot him into the top 6, because it allows you to move someone within that top 4 that we just talked about onto the second line. And that's an interesting point. Great segue, because I'm headed towards the Rantanen stuff as well. I got a lot of responses on a poll that I put out as soon as we kind of heard the news that Drouin was coming out. I basically put forward, you want Nichushkin, Rantanen, and McKinnon still, or do you want to put Drouin back up there with McKinnon and Rantanen? And one of the interesting responses I got was, what about moving Rantanen down to the second line wing and putting Drouin up there with McKinnon and Nichushkin, which I kind of like that idea for the same reasons that you like adding Jonathan Drouin back to the top of the lineup, because I do think it frees up Mikko to be more who he is, which is truly a sniper, if you ask me, especially in scoring situations. Like, he's the guy who's not going to do a lot of skating. He's going to be in a spot a lot like Ovechkin does and get the puck and absolutely rip it past the goalie most of the time. So I think that bodes well for the Avalanche. But Jackie, are you with Ezra on the Rantanen sentiment in terms of him maybe having another gear?
I agree that I would put Duran on the top line with McKinnon and Rantanen. I disagree with putting Rantanen on the second line. I think we forget how bad it was at the end of the regular season. Like, it wasn't working. That was also part of why they were terrible in those last couple games. So I think we've already seen that, and it's a no. I wouldn't put Duran on that second line because he hasn't played with Middlestad at all. And I don't think either one of those two are a, like, drive the bus, set and forget. It doesn't matter who you play with players. So they haven't played together. I just wouldn't do it. I don't think it's a great idea. As far as the depth comment, I mean, when Zach Parise is your first choice to move into the top 6, I still don't think you have great depth. Hey, if all the random bottom 6 players keep scoring and they win the cup, then obviously the depth was good enough. But at some point, they're not going to be able to just pull 4, 5, 6 goals out of the sky, and then we'll see. But hey, it's working for right now. But like, how many more does Miles Wood have in him? We'll see.
Well, I hope a lot more given his contract. But
yeah. Well, I mean, he also does what he's paid to do, which is skate, hit, whatever. And hey, a big goal from him is fantastic, but you're not going to expect it again. If it happens again, fantastic. But so as far as Mikko, I mean, I feel like I get less frustrated with him than some other folks. I do see that he's maybe not quite focused or something. Does it have to do with that concussion he had? Like, I doubt he'd be playing if he was still having symptoms, but is it just sort of lingering? I remember, what was it, 2 years ago when he had that illness and he didn't play for like almost 2 weeks? Yep. That seemed to linger into the playoffs. But last year but I don't think it's just a playoffs thing, because last year in the playoffs he was excellent in the Seattle series. So I don't know if that's just something that he has to work through. I don't think he's as terrible and as frustrating and useless as some people think. I think he's just an easy one to pick on. Big guys kind of look like they float. It's just the way it is.
Malkin gets the same thing, and that's who he gets compared to a lot too.
Yeah, so I'm not going to completely write it off. I think there's a little something to it, but I mean, he's Mikko Rantanen. He's excellent. He's a great player. They need him. He does a lot of things that maybe go unnoticed or he doesn't get credit for. So he's a top line player. You're going to win with him on the top line. So let's just not get crazy. Also, they won every single freaking game. Like, why would you make any big changes? Like, hello.
Yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Right. Like, why are we thinking of mixing things up like crazy? Just put it back the way it was. If they get behind the 8 ball, then we'll reassess. But I just don't think you're going to get too far without that top line the way it works. And I agree with Ezra about the Nichushkin thing. He scores on the power play. So is he the one that's driving that top line? Probably not. So I think it's okay if he's not with McKinnon. I don't think those two necessarily need each other. I think the way they play their games are pretty independent.
Yeah, especially Nichushkin. Like, he's just going to be in front of the net waiting for whatever comes that direction, you know, and multiple guys on this squad can put a puck towards the net. So I'm with you on that. I think that's really what makes Nichushkin so effective, is that he can play on the top line if he needs to, but he can also go on the second line and be that second wave that you're just not prepared to undertake. So, you know, I'm with you, Jackie. Like, I think the Rantanen sentiment is founded in the sense that he probably does have another gear, and we do see the frustration from him, but the guy has 11 points in 6 games. So I'm going to kind of, you know,
he was
a
huge reason why they won Game 5 against Winnipeg. So
yes, exactly.
That was his best game by far.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I think if he can get back to, like, we've talked a lot about how it seems mental for him. And the last time we talked about that was about a guy named Alexander Gorgiev. And I know the jury's still out. We're still just game 1 in the second round. But it does seem like Gorgiev, confidence-wise, has turned a corner a little bit. So have we not learned our lesson? Maybe Mikko Rantanen can turn that corner mentally. And I would not be surprised at all if he ends up being one of the top goal getters and point getters in this second round series against Dallas. But Evan, before we move on to our final segment of the day, I just want to bring something to the table that has been talked about over and over again. But man, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Landeskog seems to be showing some progression. Still not skating at like 100%, not necessarily with the team, some with the team. But man, tell me what you think the environment would be like if Gabe Landeskog returns, and what does that do to the Avalanche depth?
Holy moly. I think that's the way to put it, right? Holy moly. It should be prefaced that both Drouin and Landeskog aren't returning like tomorrow. Like, that's not happening. Drouin hopefully later in this series, and Landeskog, I mean, the only way he returns is like if the Avs make it a Stanley Cup final, like Game 7 or something, maybe. I don't know. That's a little ways away, but it is still very encouraging to see him, of course, moving, skating, doing a lot more pressure on the knee. And that's something that we did not see much of last year at all before he got shut down. So that is really promising and encouraging for sure. Like I said, I'm not getting my hopes up too high that he'll be playing again this season, but rather in preparation for next season. And this is still new for everybody, right? And I think Jackie mentioned it maybe last episode or a couple episodes ago that we'll get a true tell sign of what he's like when he's actually getting contact with the team. Because that has not happened yet. While he's skating with the team, it's a lot more in like a coach's role where he's in like sweats and helping out.
Yeah, I don't really understand that one. Why is he in sweats half the time? Like,
and then there's other practices though where he is full gear. In fact, he's also not in a non-contact sweater in some of these.
But he's not with the team. Those are the ones when he goes
he's
on.
He's not in drills. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say he's with the team, correct, but not in like an exhibition form or at 100%.
When they're at the practice
then
facility,
they split off.
Yeah, he often goes to the other sheet. So yeah, even though maybe in morning skate it's more casual, they're not doing 5-on-5. That's when he kind of is with the team, but then that's when he's in sweats. I don't really get that. I don't really understand like.
Is it so no one mistakes him for a guy that can be hit?
Like, he's not ready to actually play in any drill, right? We it's a morale thing. He's out there to be with the guys. And I mean, he is, no matter what state he's in, he is the leader of this team. And for him to get out there and and skate, I think that's a huge boost to everybody. So,
but then why just not put gear on? I don't know. I mean,
I hear you.
like full gear.
My thing is like he's kind of like to me, I see him as like a carrot on the end of the stick for his teammates, because it's like, guys, if we keep advancing, we're giving him his carrot on the stick too. Like if we can get this guy back for Game 6 or Game 7, a deciding game of a Stanley Cup final. What can you think of a parallel story in all of sports in the last 50 years? I can't. And so it's like, that's the sort of stuff that
is it like when Tampa rolled out Stamkos for
pretty
like
close,
one game?
right?
So...
Yeah, and he scores the goal, right? That's as close as I can get in terms of a comparison. And I know, like, as we've been doing all season when we talk about Gabe Landis talk, we're getting ahead of ourselves. But the other part of this that I don't know if people fully consider is we're seeing what he's doing publicly. We have no idea what he's doing privately. And I know he's going with the team on these trips and stuff, so there can't be too much private skates going on. But what we're seeing, I have a feeling, based on the way the Avs work, that what we're seeing is deliberate. We should be seeing this. They want us to see this. And I think that there's probably parts to his recovery that we are not seeing. And I'm holding out hope that those parts we're not seeing would sway our opinion towards him potentially returning this season if the Avs go deep enough.
I mean, I could see it. He could be doing some really more strenuous things. But, you know, like we mentioned a few minutes ago, the biggest, most critical thing is when he starts to take contact. I don't think he's doing that behind closed doors. Fair. I don't think they're paying some guys or having the Eagles come show up and say, like, you know, maybe actually they would never do it. But if he went up to where the Eagles are, like, some of them are actually brought to the Avs, but then the rest of the Black Aces just stay in Loveland. If he went up there and had a little secret contact skate, that would be something. I don't think the Avs are quite that creative, but I don't think that's happening, but I could see, I hope he's doing some things behind closed doors for sure. I just, he's got to start doing like hockey things, and he's not quite there yet.
Fair.
He absolutely has to be doing things behind doors. There's no way that he's not, because skating is not going to rehabilitate your knee alone. Like, there's a lot of
I'm sure he's been working out and rehab, and I'm sure he's been doing that the duration for sure.
Absolutely.
But as far as like getting ready to play the game of hockey, I don't know what he's quite there yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, like, the only thing that he needs to do, like we've said, is skate with the team and take contact. So anything behind closed doors that's more intensive than this is like, what does it even matter? Because until he's taking contact, nothing else is important.
Can you imagine though, like the NDAs that you'd have to sign if he was doing that secret practice with the Eagles? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But no, obviously we have no insight on that. This is all conjecture on my part, but
keep Keaton Middleton away from him, please.
Seriously. I know, would that be too dangerous?
I love Keaton and I love him and what he does with the Eagles, but just no.
Is letting him skate with the Eagles more or less risky than letting him take contact from the Avalanche? I think it's more.
Exactly.
They can't control themselves.
I agree. Yeah,
especially, it's true. The AHL's dangerous. People don't realize this.
We talked about
it's a big risk.
Ago. We were like, what if Gabe went and played with the Eagles? And now
he could have. He absolutely could have, like, for conditioning. I mean, if they were still playing, I would say they should seriously consider that, because you need to see him in a game and get him in a game, which would be helpful for the Avs. But right, is it too dangerous to play on that team and do it? But that would have been something as a conditioning stint.
Well, it was actually AJ from DNVR that sent me down this thought process, because when on that poll, he commented and said, it seems like as long as you keep McKinnon in up there on the top line, everything's going to be fine. And he's open to the Blendnar scenario, which I'm kind of with, but I'm also with you, Jackie. Like, it's not broke. Don't fix it. Let's let this string of success ride out until then we'll make our adjustments. I'm with that thinking. I think that's the way to go. Especially in the playoffs when you're trying to foster momentum and all that stuff. So I'm with you on that. But let's get into our final segment, which I'll preview a little bit. We're going to do our bold predictions last, of course, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on some of the broadcasts we've seen. Now that we're done with local broadcasts in the second round, we got our first strictly national broadcast last night. The ESPN, or as I'm supposed to say, the four-letter people, they are kind of catching some flack for maybe not seeming all that excited. Just real quick, Evan, what were your thoughts on that broadcast last night?
Well, I mean, I'll be frank. I don't really listen to them that much. I kind of keep the volume down and watch the game and just kind of leave it at that. But okay. I understand the flack that they're getting. It's not the same as a nationally or as a local broadcast rather. And every fan's going to complain that they are not supportive of their team. And vice versa. So it's just how it is. I do think that the funny part though that they had was that blunder where in the final minute of the Rangers Canes game, right before the start of the Stars and Avs games, where they cut. And I don't know. My totally legal stream was on an Avs broadcast, so I was like, great, we're starting now. And then everybody started freaking out. And then it went back to the game. And I was like, wait, what? What's going on? So, yeah, that was
Ado producing that? What was going on back there? It wasn't me behind the switchboard, I swear.
That was very interesting. That's for sure. And, you know, there's not much that they could have done anyway with the Rangers and Canes going to overtime, 2 overtimes rather, and pushing the Avs onto a different network. I mean, that's kind of out of their control. If only Carolina had won it in the final minute when they had like 3 chances to. So we didn't have to worry about that. But anyway, I understand the flack that they're getting. It definitely stinks, and you know, it just kind of is what it is at this point, honestly.
Did you all hear McGahee's radio call of the OT winner? So I get it, like you said, Evan. I get the flack that ESPN gets for their broadcasts, but I think it's because we're so used to the altitude, which they're Avalanche employees, so they're going to lean Avs. It's their job to lean Avs, and so I think when you get away from that, it's hard not to sense that change. But Ezra, what are your thoughts, just real quick?
I watched the national broadcast for the first round too. I like them better. I get sick of Mosier's shtick. I mean, I like the altitude guys a lot. They are fun. I love them in the regular season, but like, yeah, I was ready for announcers that are going to kind of color a game without any bias. I think it's a good thing. I think it's more interesting, and I have a better time watching the national broadcast than the altitude broadcast generally, but I get why people are annoyed, I guess. Sometimes you'll like, especially, okay, I've listened to a lot of the national broadcasts over the year because I like to watch other games too. I watch the national games most times that I can, which is not that often, but whatever. I'm going off on a tangent. But last night's game was Mike Monaco and AJ Malesko. And AJ specifically has a very monotone delivery for everything. She's very informative. She's very smart, but she doesn't emote at all. And I think that is something that, especially when you're used to Mark Rycroft as your color guy, you're never expecting somebody to be like kind of subdued when they're talking about the game. So she's just a big change. I don't know. I think she's great. I think she's brilliant, and I love the insight. So for me, I'd rather get insightful, smart people than loud homers, but I get why you would want the loud homer.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong in calling them a loud homer. Like I led with, like they are altitude employees. They're KSE employees. It's their job description is pretty specific. I will say though, the late great Peter McNabb, he seemed to always balance out that homer vibe on the altitude broadcast. We'd hear Mosier, as you put it, his shtick, he would say, "Oh my goodness, how is that not a penalty?" And Peter McNabb would say, "Because it's not."
Yeah.
And that was always, really, really nice. Jackie, what did you think? Did you watch the national broadcast in round 1 as well?
Yes. Well, that's the only thing I could get on my TV. So first of all, I'm just happy to, well, it's true. It's not even a dig. It's the absolute truth. Yeah. First of all, I'm just concerned about like is this on TV? And then now that's not in question, but with the Canes Rangers game going overtime, it's like which channel and when are we going to switch? And they don't tell you when you switch back. You start seeing like these. One game they started just showing this guy getting dressed for the NFL draft, and then I was just like, okay, well, I guess we need to move on. But I agree with Evan that I don't pay attention to it a lot. It's just kind of background. It's nice that they add a thing or two, but I'm not really like intently listening to what they say. In general, I do prefer a more straightforward broadcast. That's how it should be. They should be there to inform. They should be there just call the game. I don't like it when it's story time. I don't like it when it's tangents. Just call the game and maybe tell me something I didn't already know. So that's just what I like in a broadcast. And so I'm not a big fan of the altitude, and I get it. At least it's different, and they're cheering for the right team and this and that. But I think I figured out why I dislike it so much is because the Avs themselves are not a cheery, it's all for the fans, it's all fun kind of organization. And to me, it's such a contrast. Like, if they were out there and just so fan-friendly and lovable, and they gave you all this information and created all this wonderful behind-the-scenes content, like, behind the scenes isn't shots of guys walking onto an airplane. That's not behind the scenes. Just putting that out there. And so that's why I think it rubs me the wrong way, because it's like they're just having fun and they love the Avs. And it's like, but this isn't an organization that has fun. It takes itself way too seriously. And for me, I can't be in two camps at the same time. It's so inauthentic to me. I think they're pushing it way too hard. It's ridiculous. McGahey and his shtick is crazy to me. I can't do it. I get it why it's like such an Avs fan thing, and he's our guy, and we love it, and we love all these memes that we can make from it. I'm just not that kind of fan. And like I said, and the Avs are not that kind of organization. And it's just give me the normal. Just put it on the TV and call the game. And yeah, the national people can definitely get too far into certain narratives. I haven't found any so far, which is good, but I know they'll get to them. And that part gets annoying too, and it's sad because a lot of people see that and it can really like ruin some guys' reputations. So hopefully we don't have to start doing that, but yeah, I'm just glad when I can just watch something and it's not too annoying one way or the other, and that works for me.
Well, and to your guys' credit, like what I mentioned about Peter McNabb, he's probably drawing on experience, and I'm not trying to take shots at the guys at altitude for maybe not. Riker has his experience, obviously, but like AJ Milezko is in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. She helped the USA win their first gold medal ever. She won a national championship at Harvard. So like this is a person who's really smart and knows hockey very well. So I am that kind of fan, Jackie, as you mentioned about Connor McGahey's call, and I heard you, Ezra, say you didn't necessarily like that call, the overtime.
What was he talking about? Why are we all of a sudden in the Wild West? What was going on?
It's a Toy Story reference.
Woody, reach for the sky.
But they're all pre-planned. Like every player has his own tagline, and it's like,
and that's why you called it a shtick, because it is a shtick. Absolutely, yeah, it is.
It's not as spontaneous. Yeah,
Ezra's face right now. He's like, he looks like he got the context, and it still doesn't.
I'm the young one of the group here, so I understood it and I enjoyed it. So
I mean, I watched those movies as a kid too, but
I look over at Ezra and he's just okay.
Very lost. Sure, I will say this: the narratives part. I think that's a general sports media thing, right? Like the Lakers and the Nuggets. What will LeBron James do to come back from 3-0 down for the first time ever? Right? Like that's been the narrative, and it's just you have to go for.
I think there's a difference between storyline and narrative. Like, I get that the media has to find something. Like, okay, that's fine. But like I said, they can really start hammering stuff where it starts to ruin reputations. And that stuff's not cool.
And I was going to say on top of that, Jackie, it was already a long shot anyway. But thank God the Blackhawks and Connor Bedard aren't in it, because that would be all we would hear about during these playoffs.
Oh boy!
That time will come eventually, but we don't need to worry about that now. Luckily,
Can you imagine if the Blackhawks had won the draft lottery?
McDavid narratives.
It's all we would have heard about.
Yeah,
I was going to say we could actually touch on the draft a little bit, because the draft lottery rather, because that did happen. Blackhawks did get second. I don't think the order did not change from the odds. So thank God the Blackhawks don't have Bedard and Celebrini. So Celebrini will be a San Jose Shark more likely than not.
Sharklin Celebrini.
Sharklin. That's a good one. He does have family ties though to the area, so that is actually pretty cool for him there.
He went to Boston University at age 16, y'all.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And had to go to class.
He's going to be so good.
Yeah. He's the youngest Hobie Baker winner ever.
He's going to be very good. I'm excited to see him out west. They have to see him a couple times, a couple times a season. So another.
I was always
defender.
San Jose is so stripped bare, though. It's just.
I know.
And unreal. And they need to get Will Smith to sign. Like, I think people are sleeping on that storyline. Will Smith hasn't signed yet, and they've offered, so it's not them, it's him. I'm very curious to see what he's waiting for. Or he might be deciding they're a little too crappy.
Yeah. That's a good point, Ezra. The signing should maybe be helped by the confirmation that they're going to get Celebrini. Yeah.
Maybe.
Like, now that it's like, okay, it'll be Will Smith, Celebrini, William Eklund, and I guess they have to find some defensemen somewhere. But like, that's a solid forward core to really.
But they just have literally nothing. Like I like their young players too. Like Bordelot, I think, is another one. But other than that, they have nothing whatsoever. Yeah. They didn't even have like decent vets. They have nothing. So they're supposed to have Couture, but then he got hurt, and we'll see. So none of these completely ripped to the studs rebuilds have worked yet. And I know it takes time, but I don't know. I think some of these have gone way too far. Like it's cool to have a few good young players. I like young players, but geez, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to work.
Something to learn from. I mean, that's kind of like, obviously the Avs had the 48-point season, but the Avs teams when Rantanen and McKinnon were coming up were never this horrible.
Well, they never tried to tank. That's
right.
One good thing is they never tried to tank. They just had a lot of terrible veterans that they chose, but they never ripped it to the studs.
Right.
So I think it made it.
Soderberg might have been tanking. I don't know.
Well, Soderberg was good that first year.
The first year he was, yes.
It was easier for them to turn the corner but like they still had Eric Johnson. Like if you're ripping it to the studs, he would have been gone years before. Like anybody halfway decent over the age of like 23 would have been gone. And so
and you look at all these teams that have done the full rebuild recently, and none of them have quite gotten.
They're not there yet. Yeah,
Ottawa, Buffalo, Detroit, all of them are still missing playoffs. New Jersey, yeah. It is interesting. I wonder what the future of tanking, because tanking theoretically in some degree is always going to exist, I think, but I wonder what the future of it looks like, because these teams that fully tanked have not been able to get out of the tank.
Good point.
I feel like LA did it better because, if they would have ripped it to the studs, Kopitar would have been gone. Doughty would have been gone. They would have gotten rid of everything, and they didn't. And I know that they haven't won the cup again or gotten close, but they're a playoff team now, and they didn't have to go down into the complete rip it to the studs. And I think that's more the way you need to do it. You need to recognize where you are and maybe start putting assets more into the future than the present, but they didn't burn it to the ground.
Yeah, Nashville's an'another good example, I feel like.
Yeah.
We expected them to fully burn it down, and then when they didn't, we're all like,
or
what
Vancouver,
the hell?
too. People were like, why were you buying? Why'd you trade for Hronek? And it's like,
yeah.
We don't do that. Pretty much what they said, yeah.
Yeah, so...
And it seems like they were right. It's interesting. I'm excited to see how the league... everybody in national media always says it's a copycat league, and I think it's true. I'm very curious to see how this all plays out in the next wave of, like, what does Tampa's rebuild look like in 5 years? It's going to be interesting.
I feel like there's pressure to be one or the other. Like, you always hear in the media, why are they doing this? They're in a rebuild. The same thing with Philly. Like, why on earth are they doing any of this? They're in a rebuild. It's like, okay, well, they can continue to be competitive. And I know that riding the middle can be a problem too, because you're not really accomplishing anything. But I think there's a lot of pressure to either be like one or the other. And I think you need to be real with where you're at. But I just, but yeah, Tampa's a good one to see where I can't ever see them ripping it to the studs. They're not an organization.
Well, we'll find out if they don't sign Stamkos and
maybe they shouldn't. It might be this. It depends on if he would take probably I think it's more about term than money. Like if he would take shorter term, they'd probably do it. But if he wants like an 8-year deal, I don't think they should. You just can't do it.
I think. I mean, if I was in control of Tampa and also in control of Steven Stamkos, what I would do is have both sides agree that, like, hey, every year we're going to do a 1-year contract until you can't go anymore. And if we're not good, we'll trade you to a contender. And if we are good, we'll keep you.
Yeah. I'd say even like 3-year would be okay.
Sure.
But yeah, that's how it should be. I just think, and I know it's not my money. Like, it's great that these guys can get these long contracts. I wouldn't want to be unwanted. I wouldn't want to be a negative asset. I wouldn't want to be an albatross. Like, I think if you could make $5 million and be wanted, I think that'd be better than making $7 million and being unwanted.
Yeah, especially when you have a career of making millions of dollars. Like,
exactly. You don't need
X number of millions isn't going to make. It's crazy to say that in the financial state I'm in, but X number of millions that's the difference.
But right, like, is $6 million and then have people happy that you're showing up? I think that's kind of the happy medium here. Like a guy like Stastny never signed long term anywhere. I guess the 6-year deal with, I think it was 6-year deal with the Avs was probably the longest. But when he left,
St. Louis too.
I don't think it was that long. I think that was the thing. I think he got a raise, but it was never that long. And I think you kind of do it right that way, where he's able to kind of choose the teams he wanted to be at. He was never unwanted, never bought out, never.
So he got his entry level, obviously, 3 years. Then he got 5 from the Avs, and then he got 4 from St. Louis with a full no trade clause there, and then 3 from Vegas with a modified, and then 1 on his way out. So, I mean, I like the idea of the 1-year contract, especially for, if you're Steven Stamkos, like, you want security. You want to know you're going to get paid for.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little uncertain. Like I said, I think 3 years at his point in his career right now would be fair.
Yeah.
And then we'll see. I think, didn't Kopitar just sign? I think it was a 3. Am I losing it?
Anze Kopitar? I believe so.
I think it was a 3. I think. I don't think he's on a year yet. 2 year. Okay.
$14 million. Yeah.
I think that's a happy medium, but these guys are loyal and they just want to stay with their team and everything. So I think when you get to that point, it is a pretty good benefit for the organization that they don't have to, because term's just a killer. If you can avoid term, I really think term is worse than the dollars when it comes to contracts.
Yeah. Well, you can find a way, I think, structure-wise, contract-wise, that it makes sense to spread the money, and like you said, it's easier money-wise than it is term. But like, that's where the risk is truly for a franchise, is in term, which is why it's always kind of the beacon of what agents are going after. It's like, well, can we get that extra year on there? I'm sure that's like the last line of questioning from an agent before a contract is signed. Can we take it from 6 to 7? But before we get too far into that, let's start talking about our bold predictions, because we had a few last week, and the way things settled, we were hoping Dallas would maybe win it in 6, and that we would get 2 games between our last show and this show, but we only got the game 1. So some of our bold predictions remain unsettled. One of those is Jackie. You said you wanted to wait till after game 2 to judge this, so you wanted Girard to score a goal. So we'll see if we get that in game 2. And then, Evan, you as well, you said Casey Middlestat will have 3 assists in the first 2 games. I think he'll need 3 in game 2 for you to get a ding there. And then last week, Ezra, you said, you said the Avs would have a perfect penalty kill You alluded to this earlier. That was not the case. In fact, they got scored on like at the very end of a 5-on-3, sort of going into a 5-on-4, and I was just.
I wish I had said perfect 5-on-4.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my wife was like, "Wow, they're gonna kill this," and I'm like, "No, they're not. This is looking like a goal. Like a goal should have happened 20 seconds ago in this 5-on-3." So
Jurgen was great, but
he was.
Yeah.
And so there's an X there, and of course Adrian, from the background of his remote producing last week, said that Vegas would win the series and that the Avs would be playing in Colorado for Game 1, and of course that was wrong. But I mean, as I sit here today, I'm not too mad about it, so we're cool. We're cool. But that leaves us to this week's edition of Bold Predictions.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I call that bold talk.
All right. So the way this works is we make a bold prediction, each of us individually, every week, and then we circle back around on the next episode and hand out dings and buzzers. Dings for winners and buzzers for losers. If you listened to last week's episode, you heard Ezra's hilarious hashtag, and it's so long that I have to go look it up on Twitter real quick. But please always reach out to us with your bold predictions. We had one responder to the hashtag I listened to the Colorado Avalanche Mile High Hockey broadcast. And
they should get a ding just for using that.
Yeah,
hashtag.
thanks for remembering what I said. I didn't remember what I said. Hell yeah.
I think hashtag bold predictions is good enough. I think we will find it. But what was their prediction then that they took the time to give us that hashtag?
The pumpkin eater at Peterman Peter says Kovalenko will get an assist, so he'll have to play first of all.
I know.
In Game 2, and I don't know how good that's looking with Chris Wagner.
Wagner played well.
Yeah, he did not look out of place, to say the least. So we'll see if that happens for you, Mr. Pumpkin Eater or Mrs. Pumpkin Eater. I'm not sure. You're kind of anonymous in that regard. Person Pumpkin Eater, we'll put it that way. We'll double back next week and see if we get you a ding or a buzzer. But let's go ladies first this week. Jackie, what's your bold prediction?
Okay, I'm going to let my Gerard prediction ride. So I've got my Georgiev prediction. I'm going to let my Gerard prediction ride until he scores. But for my official bold prediction for this week, I'm just going to throw it out there. If the Avs want to just be on this wagon to destiny, to being a dynasty, let's sweep the Stars. Let's just do it. I want to get, if they want to be that team, I'm getting credit for it. So let's just call for a sweep. Prove me right, Avs.
That's like throwing darts at the wall, baby. One of them's going to stick. and if it's that one, you'll look very smart.
Exactly.
Very, very smart.
So that's where I'm at.
Well, Ezra kind of talked about it last week too. So I have him on the back burner, kind of in the same vein as your Gerard to score a goal. If the Avs win game 1 and 2, I still think you get a ding there, Ezra. But I like sweeping the Stars, especially because the second round seems to be kind of the hardest round for the Avalanche so far, other than the final round, of course, in recent history. So if the Avs can get past the second round and into the Western Conference Final, I think we kind of all agreed heading into the playoffs that was kind of the barometer for success. If they get there, I think most of us will be pretty pleased. But Ezra, why don't you give me your bold prediction this week?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that I believe in the sweep still. I'm gonna go with Drouin comes back in Game 3, and Rantanen scores twice in that game.
I love it. Because I'm with you, man. I think that's going to be big to help Rantanen kind of shake it off here in the next few games. And I think, like, when the dust settles, if the Avs win this series, it's gonna be largely in part to how Rantanen has turned it on. And so I'm with you. I like that one. Rantanen was a part of a lot of my bold predictions this year because I was, as we all typically call it, bold hopes, is really hoping he would kind of hit his stride, and it hasn't happened. I wonder too about the lingering concussion, but I digress. Evan, let's hear your bold prediction this week.
Yeah, I had two in mind. Ezra took one of them, but that's okay because my number one bold prediction is still alive, and I want to talk about it because this guy's been on a hot streak, has really bounced back well, and I think that it's going to show in one of our games coming up before whenever our next show is, and so therefore I think that Alexander Georgiev is going to pitch a shutout in one of the upcoming games before our next show.
I love it.
Oh yeah.
Be sure I preface Alexander Georgiev, not a team is going to get a shutout. I said Alexander Georgiev.
You did it. You did it.
I do want to shout out Makar. I think he's really turned it up a notch.
Oh my God, yeah.
You did. You're right. And Jackie, I think you were kind of on to something when you were doing your bold predictions a few weeks prior to the playoffs and the week heading in. You were like, Makar is going to get it going on the power play.
Yeah.
And he really has. You see him at his finest when he's quarterbacking that power play effectively. Actually, also, I feel like he's got a little bit more of a jump than he had.
Yeah. I think part of it maybe he was conserving a little bit, but I also think I think some players can move it up a notch, consciously.
I think so.
I think everyone wishes they could, but I think only certain ones can, and because I've seen it live too. There's been a couple games live that I've watched where I'm just like, oh my God, what is Makar doing? It's just unbelievable that he could move the switch up like that. And I think he's done it this playoff so far.
Well, to double down on that, Evan and I were fortunate enough to witness that coast-to-coast goal in round one live and in person. And that might be the friendliest hug we've ever given each other. Because of how exciting it was. Just we just witnessed something that we knew and everyone knew in the moment, that was something out of this world that not maybe 5 people on earth could do.
Yeah, and I think some of his moments live, I think just has a little extra sizzle. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't quite come off on TV. I also think his shot, when you really see him crank it live, you're just he's going to take someone's head off. If he aims wrong, his shot can be crazy live.
Well, we've seen McKinnon be behind the net when Makar's about to take a ripper and totally cower underneath it. So I think you're right. I think on ice level too, people are like, holy shit, please don't. But I'm loving these. We're kind of touching on all the bases. We're sweeping. We're getting a shutout. We got Rantanen scoring 2 goals and Jonathan Drouin coming back. And so I'm going to keep it going with this Cale Makar stuff. And I'm going to say that Cale Makar has a 4-point night. Probably
I feel like he's got an overtime winner in him. Yeah. I guess if I need to have a real prediction, maybe that's my real prediction. I mean, a sweep's a real prediction, but we're basically all predicting that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Makar needs to
know that I'm wearing Homer glasses. I mean, they're tinted for sure.
Well, they just haven't even lost yet. How can you really have a different opinion that's based on reality, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing them dominate and find ways to get out of it in front of them. I'm not completely convinced that they're not going to find a couple ruts, but until they find them, just keep rolling it.
Yep.
The only thing that gives me pause on the sweep is just that I feel like Dallas has a lot more to give than they gave, but I just don't think it matters.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Dallas has more to give, but I don't know that even the Avalanche have played their best game yet in these playoffs.
Right. Exactly.
So that's kind of where I still give them the kicker. So I'm with you on that, Ezra. I think, and we talk about some players can flip a switch. I think McKinnon although he's been just as dominant as he was all year, I still think that there's a level to his game that we haven't quite seen, at least.
I don't like it when he forces it. I think it's got to come because he's feeling it. If he really tries to force it.
That's fair.
But yeah, he hasn't really taken over a game yet, which is great. They haven't needed it. But it's probably coming.
It's a matter of time. It's totally a matter of time. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's edition of the Mile High Hockey Lab. We have about 250 live viewers and a guest cat currently on Evan's screen. Every time you folks come and join this program, it really means a lot to us. We have more and more people coming to watch and listen to what we do. So thank you folks so much. Please head on over to milehighhockey.com. We have all of your Avs related and playoff related content on deck for you. We got previews, opinion pieces, and of course, just our daily threads that you can kind of chime in on. Thanks to the three of you for joining me today. And the last thing I want to do before we end the broadcast today is just wish a happy birthday to the previously mentioned late, great Peter McNabb. Today is his birthday. And as I wrote in the script, that call at the end of the Tampa Bay Lightning Avs series in the final where he said, "It's over, pal." That's going to live forever inside of my heart, and as well as that interview he got with Gabe Landeskog. So happy birthday, Pete, and we miss you. And thank you to his family and everybody who, keeps going with what Maxi brought to the table. So with that, folks, thank you so much for listening to us. We are the Mile High Hockey Lab. Go Avalanche.
Thank you for tuning into the Mile High Hockey Lab.